Okay, as I mentioned, the update method in the JavaScript shell actually performs 4 operations. We've seen 3 of them so far. It can do a wholesale replacement of a document. It can manipulate individual fields within a document. It can perform an upsert operation, which is either an update or an insert if no document already exists that matches the specified criteria. And finally, it can update multiple documents. I've been intentionally sneaky and always performing updates specifying a criteria that matches exactly one document or 0 documents in a collection so far. But, in fact, the update operator can affect more than one document at a time. So again, to look at the people collection, we have a variety of people with various names. If I wanted to give every person some new field, I can. The empty document acts as a selector which matches every document in the collection. This is also true for find. And for instance, I might want to set a new field. Maybe everyone here is a doctor. Now, an important difference between MongoDB and relational databases is that by default, even if the first argument to update is a query specification that would match every document, the update method only actually affects a single document, namely whichever one happens to be the first one that it finds. If I want the update method to affect all documents in the collection, I have to supply an option. And from the JavaScript shell, that option is called multi-true. If I do not supply the multi option to the update method, then the update method will affect just one document. In fact, which document it affects is somewhat underdefined. By specifying multi-true, then this update will traverse every document in the collection and add a new field. And now everyone has a title. It's important to understand this detail. The default behavior of an updates query in SQL is to update every record that matches the where clause, or every record in the table if no where clause is specified. The default behavior to update in MongoDB is to update just one document in the collection. You must specify an extra argument in the JavaScript shell in order to update multiple documents in a collection. Some of our drivers for different programming languages actually split this up into 2 separate methods, one perhaps called update and the other called multi-update. In the JavaScript shell, you simply have to add an extra argument. Now let me say something further about the actual semantics of what happens when you perform a multi-document write operation, such as a multi-update. Inside of MongoDB, there's a single thread for each operation that's being executed. So for instance, this update operation will happen sequentially inside of a single thread. However, every write operation that affects more than one document is carefully coded in a cooperative multitasking fashion to occasionally yield control to allow other operations to affect the same dataset. In particular, the multi-update that you see on the screen affected approximately 10 documents. It would be possible, if there were other write operations coming into the system, for that specific update operation to affect, say, 3 documents, and then pause to allow other operations to proceed, and then pick up again, affect 4 more documents, and then pause to allow other operations to proceed, and then finally to finish out the last 3 remaining documents. We call this pausing yielding because in point of fact, there's a shared resource that different write operations share, which we use to sequence write operations. It's basically a kind of mutex lock. Now, what's important to understand about the concurrency consequences of what I'm describing is that write operations, even if they affect multiple documents, are not isolated transactions. Instead, they might affect an arbitrary number of documents, then yield, allow other readers or writers to operate, and then pick up again to affect some more documents. In general, it's not possible to have an isolated write operation that affects multiple documents inside of MongoDB. However, we do guarantee that an individual document manipulation is always atomic with respect to any concurrent readers or writers. That is to say, if you send an update to the system that will affect 10 documents, then whenever that update operation is affecting any individual document, no reader or writer operation in the system will see the document half updated. This atomicity guarantee allows you to build things on top of MongoDB. For example, if it were strictly necessary for your application to have some kind of isolation between different threads, you could, for instance, construct a locking type mechanism treating a designated document in the database as a shared resource that writer operations needed to acquire, perhaps by updating it, before they performed any operation on the ordinary data. And indeed, this actually turns out to be a trick that goes on inside of the sharding architecture. In any case, From a semantic point of view, a multi-update operation is simply an update that affects multiple documents. From a concurrency perspective, it's important to remember that MongoDB does not offer isolated transactions while these updates are happening. Okay, let's have a quiz. Recall the schema of the scores collection. Documents have an underscore ID, of course, a student number, a type field, and a score field. How would you give every record whose score was less than 70 an extra 20 points?